Morning, members, officers, and viewers. Welcome to the Scrutiny Committee. This committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council Standing Orders. The Council Standing Orders and Code of Conduct will apply at all times, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. The Welsh translations of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The image and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the council. Okay. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, sure. Apologies from Councillor Jenkins and the leader who's requested to be here.
Thank you. Any declaration to the interest? Quite a wide-ranging subject earlier this morning. No declaration to interest. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, then, please. For accuracy, page 3, page 4, page 5. Are there any matters arising? No? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to item 4 then, corporate wellbeing self-assessment report 23-24. For each of members, we've divided these up into various areas. We're looking for an overview from the Chief Executive in the first instance. Please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Councillor Scrutiny is running a little late, but joining us shortly, which I think you've been advised, so just apologise for asking before he joins us. Yes, so this is the annual assessment for 23-24. This is its first public hearing and consideration by members before it goes on its journey to Governance and Audit Committee, then on to Cabinet and Council in November. I think my first observations on the report is that as a council we need to consider its format for future use. It's a very long report, and I think there's a way of us being able to condense this for future use, and also service planning methodologies which inform that. Because ultimately as a council what we need to understand for each year is what we've achieved, what difference has it made, what have we struggled to deliver, and what impact of those challenges and struggles led us to. And ultimately, what's our key achievements and our key challenges? How do we summarise that in a way that's really easy for certainly members of the public, which obviously are the most important thing in terms of what we deliver as a council, to help them understand what we deliver and the challenges we face. So don't intend going into each area in great detail, because hence that's why the director's here, and would like to welcome Tanya. This is Tanya's very first committee meeting with Newport, but we do have Natalie Poyner and some colleagues from social services to assist as well, because this is a look back, clearly when Sally Jenkins was with us rather than Tanya. So I think from the perspective overall, all members will be aware of the budget challenges we face, and again we'll be heading into 25-26 with similar challenges to previous years. So as Chief Exec, if I were to give an overall assessment from my lens, I would say our performance as a council in light of those challenges is good to excellent in some areas, but clearly we have some specific challenges around homelessness, children's social care, obviously the provision of adult care as well. Education performance, we have no schools in measures across the authority, not just in unsatisfactory, in no sort of category of measures, which I think is outstanding and something that we should really celebrate as a council. In 23-24, obviously we did really well in terms of waste, and I'm sure that Paul will talk about that in a bit more detail, where we rolled out the 3 weekly collections. We also rolled out the business, the trade waste regulations as well. So real challenge for us, but delivered really effectively. In terms of sort of the other key performance areas where we did well, obviously regeneration continues. Never an easy program of work to deliver, but we've continued to progress some significant schemes, even with the challenges that we face as a financial challenge we face as an authority. Also rolled out the new website. I think, you know, it's been certainly concerning for members in recent years as to how the website performs and how that acts as platform for customers to interact with the council. So that's just a very brief overview, and hopefully directors will start taking you through each section of the corporate plan. If that's okay.
Thank you so much. Welcome, Ms. Evans. It's a pleasure to see a new member of staff. We've been asked this morning to consider, as Ms. Evans says, Council's progress towards achieving the statement, whether there's sufficient information in this report, and consider the report self-assessments and the supporting action plan, and whether it wishes to make any comments and recommendations to the annual report before it goes to cabinet. The first section we're going to look at on item 4 is well-being objective 1. That's pages 20 to 30 of the pack, and that's will be led by Mr. Jones, with possible support from Mr. Bowman if needed.
Before we go into that, can I just make a comment on the chief executive? Of course. Yeah, but because I'm going to make a comment on the overall report that I was. Now, when I looked at this, it's imagine I'm a member of Joe Public looking at this, who's not used to sitting in these committee rooms, and I don't know what their well-being objective is, or a strategic priority, or a way of working, or a service level objective, etc. So it's a really, there's a lot in this report, isn't there? And one of my big worries in this report, I think I said it last year, is losing the sort of wood for the trees, because there's a lot of really good stuff in here, and we should be sort of flagging that right up. And I'm pleased to see in the report that, you've got the executive summary. If somebody reads this, they get it right at the beginning. What's the council's done really well? What are the key issues for the coming year? All I would suggest is that what spoiled it a little bit for me was the fact there were those 2 tables before the executive summary, because I'm looking at those and I'm thinking, the well-being objectives, trying to think what that is. One of them's all green, one's got some reds, and I'm thinking, why are the reds there that they're not reflected in the green above? And by the time I've done all that, I think council teams have lost their impact, actually. I think they should be right up there at the front, the first thing that people see. And the other thing I'd suggest is that where because there surely must be a document for the public as well. And where the public are actually invited to have their say is on page 80. Now, I'm not, everybody's going to plough through to page 80 because the whole point of the exec summary courses is the important stuff right up the front. And I think it'd be better if the public were in, get strategy executive summary. They were invited to comment. And I don't know how much work this would involve, but I think it'd be really helpful as well, all those achievements, if there was a little reference, if people wanted to, find out more about that particular achievement, maybe there was a page number there where they could, dive straight into that section to find out more about it. So those are, sorry, Chair, those are just, that's very helpful. Overall, I must say, I used to some work elsewhere for the government department. They always reference the page number from the executive summary to the document. And I always found that really very, very, very helpful.
As a supplementary to that, if I might, when I had a pre-viewing of this with Mr. Cornwall, I said I thought they'd been rather harsh on themselves with some of the rank ratings. But you did give me an answer at the time. I don't know if you'd like to tell us.
I think, we obviously need to do some reflection about the format of this. I think that part of the challenge is that what this report is trying to do is obviously a summary of what we've done, but also meet a series of statutory responsibilities as part of the Local Government Wellbeing Elections Act. So which is around that self-assessment, and that's quite an involved process to ensure that we're meeting our requirements around continuous improvement. And now that's wrapped up in one report. It was a decision to do that in one hit, and I think there's probably some reflection from our point of view about actually, is that the right way to do it? Are they probably separate documents, one which is a self-assessment and one is which is an update on where we are against the corporate plan programs. But I think taking on board the committee's feedback, that's one for us, for the team to take away and look at again.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Does anybody else want to ask a question of the chief exec? No? Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Jones, please.
Next year, I'll sort of give a very brief highlights from the wellbeing objective and recent spin as well. So overall, the objective is green, but not without some significant challenges. Some highlights across the year. Importantly, the local development plan has progressed, and as you will be aware, has been cabinet through council, so that'll be onwards now until we get to the full deposit stage, that'll be work carrying out in this year, ready for completion for 2026. Really important document that, obviously, because it sets the tone for so much else and so many other strategies of the council. We were awarded investment zone status at the back end of this financial year, which is a huge opportunity for Newport, and particularly to help grow the semiconductor industry, which is of national significance as well. So we hope to see that being developed in partnership with Cardiff and Cardiff Capital Region over this year. There's been some significant investments inward investment into Newport over this period that have developed more rapidly. Just highlighting some of the KLA facilities near completion. Similarly, Growth Advantage Data Centre and Microsoft have completed their preparation works and shortly be building their new facility over in Imperial Park, as well as a number of others. I mean, it's been slightly hindered by construction industry inflation. We've experienced a couple of years of exceptional levels of construction industry inflation, which makes some of these investments challenging, but it's all the more good to see that things are going ahead. There's also been improvement in enforcement activities on challenging areas, particularly in the city centre. These efforts take a very long time to get to fruition, but it's nice now to see finally the end of the tunnel. I was quite pleased to finally see scaffolding removed from the Dock Street this week. And we've seen that on TJ's, there's a large number of other businesses of which, and empty properties of which we're making enforcement activity, and that will progress out of this year. It's a very long trudge, but it's good to see some progress in there. Obviously, the council supported businesses during a difficult time through various rate relief schemes. In terms of larger scale projects, the council directly responsible for Transport Bridge Visitor Centre is largely complete during this period and will be open in a few months' time for visitors. The work on the bridge itself remains challenging and is ongoing, and the enabling works for the leisure centre started in this period and on the ongoing throughout this year. We're also progressed slightly on our medieval ship in that they've been arranging how they put it back together. It's a really challenging jigsaw puzzle. And as you'll see, this work now going to be commissioned for this year on feasibility options for that.
Yeah, so some of the important around education, so building on capacity around schools. We've come into the conclusion of the Band B programme at the moment. The Baysleg expansion has been delivered. St Andrews is underway at the moment. It's going shortly, and Whitehead's obviously is coming to the conclusion as well. So that programme was incredibly extensive program of a primary and secondary education provision and a strategic outline plan for Band C, improved by much website. That's been done so far, and obviously priorities around that and around new school at Millbrook and Welsh Community Provision in line with the Welsh Education Strategic Plan. So the capital point of view, construction point of view, those are the priorities. We've also continued to be really successful in getting grants through large commitment and also bringing back to full service carbon reduction team have been incredibly successful in getting grants from Welsh Government to fulfill organisation. Yes, so that's been really important. The performance across schools in Newport continues to be high, either in line with Welsh average or above, despite the deprivation levels across Newport. So that's really positive. And the priority we've had previously around and continue to have previously around those young people on education and quality training. Let's continue to provide strong performance for us. So we achieved target for year 11 with a lot of education and quality training. I think we're first by best rated Wales for that. At year 13, I think we're third in Wales. So really strong performance around that. And obviously attendance figures for Newport. So obviously attendance is one of the biggest indicators that we can have, and attendance figures for Newport either in line with or better than the Wales average.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cox, did you want to come in on the ship? But not constraining yourself to that. If there are other areas you want to look at.
I don't know if anybody else saw it, but there was a report came out. It was historic England actually, but what they said was particular to Wales. That they carried out a really hard-nosed economic study on what is the best way or the most effective way to kickstart a regeneration of a town. And it came out absolutely clearly. I say it was carried by economists, and it came out clearly that without a doubt, the best thing a town can do to regenerate itself is put real focus on its heritage, because that sort of draws in, obviously, people, visitors. It draws in people are going to use hotels. But the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that it also, the evidence is it draws from businesses as well, because people like to set up businesses in nice places. Professional workers like to come live in nice places. And I just think it mentions here in the summary of achievements and challenges in this section, it mentions the transporter bridge. But I just think we're really underplaying there what Newport got to offer, because we've got the ship. And it seems to me, we've been at it over 20 years now, I think, but we still haven't found anywhere to put the thing. Also, there's the quite exciting actually. I thought the recent what they call in Killeen the Treaty of Killeen, the signing between Cadwyn and Council and the National Museum, and so with all those really exciting elements, which potentially have a massive impact on the city. And I thought it was a shame they aren't mentioned there actually in this section, which is where they should go. Okay.
There's always would like to
I absolutely agree, Councillor Fox. Heritage has to be one of our key strands of economic growth. Transport bridge, of course, it is a challenging project in terms of the refurbishment. But once it's complete, and it will be completed, it will be an absolutely fantastic draw in terms of heritage. And I can remember before Councillor Jewett was an elected member having conversations with Councillor Jewett about the heritage and Councillor Mayor about the importance of heritage to Newport going forward. There is cultural strategy that's in development, and that will be wrapping up some of the heritage aspects as well. Team in the former region have been working on feasibility studies around the future location of the ship. As we've said before to committee, it's not an easy artifact to find a home for, because it's to be kept within a certain environment, etc. But we choose the phrase, we are on it. So, it is on our radar. At the moment, obviously the priority from a heritage perspective is to get the transport bridge finished, get the visitor centre open. But our charters heritage, ship, all of this does need to be captured within an effective heritage strategy for the city. So we are, to show committee, but maybe taking on board your points, we just need to emphasise that a little bit more strongly within the annual assessment as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor James.
Hello. So I had some well, a question on strategic priority 8. I'm not sure if we've actually covered. Have we covered the whole wellbeing objective now and just general questions, or?
No, we haven't scratched it yet, really. So we're looking at pages 20 to 30. And could I also ask you to look at the performance measures as described on pages 82 to 85? And if you're content with those, we'll move on to objective 2. Just to clarify again, Councillor Jade, what did you want to comment on?
Well,
One.
yeah, so it was becoming
right.
a living wage city. And I
Yeah.
just noticed that in the initial table on report page 7, I can't remember what page that is in the full agenda pack, I'm afraid. It's rated amber, but the breakdown on page 15 of the report is really positive, and I think probably doesn't fully spell out the picture. So I was just wondering what the challenges were. Why is it rated amber? And what has the council done to sort of mitigate those challenges as well, please?
Okay,
So in terms of why it's amber, I think it's amber in terms of how far, what we weight the likelihood of completing success. And there's a lot of positive, discussion, like you said, in that section, isn't there, in terms of businesses that have signed up to the like. I suppose the eventual aim for Newport to become a living wage city involves a method of all businesses signing up to that. So I think it's recognising that challenge, which is considerable. So there's work being done on how we may achieve that during this year. But obviously, whilst that, you recognise that Newport only has control of some of the levers. So there's a lot of good activity going on, which is talked about there, but still actually getting to a living wage is quite a big challenge. I think that's why it's been classed as amber.
the leader would like to come in and comment on that as well.
Yeah, it's a good question, Councillor James. It's getting the private sector to become fully on board, basically. Where we can encourage, we can even try and control, but we can't make. So that's why it's
I just wondered if perhaps, those answers were great, but maybe more of that could have gone in that breakdown so that it's clear to anyone who reads that in the future and maybe doesn't think to come back and watch the scrutiny or read the minute. So it's clear to them as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Cox, yeah. I was towards the end of the report, obviously there's the household risk registers in there. And just following on from Councillor James, I had a similar sort of confusion in that I'm not clear what the relationship is between the assessments under each of the wellbeing objectives and the risk register at the end. Because to take a couple of examples, that if housing is virtually sort of straight red, if you look at the risk register, yeah, if we then look at I think is it coming wellbeing objective 3, I think housing just there. If you look there, there's no, it doesn't seem to be reflected there. It's all green to amber, and it's the same in for example, look at highways, or social services, another one that services for children and adults is actually on the very maximum score you can make it on the risk register, 25. Yet if you go into the main body of the report, that's just not reflected. And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe I don't understand the relationship between the risk register and what we're trying to reflect in the report. But it is, again, thinking of members of the public looking at this, it is a little confusing, I think, and difficult to describe one way or the other.
Can we sort of stick to the report? If we dive all around it, possibly the right people are not going to be answering the questions, but Mr. Conway, you want to come in on this?
we can do that. I think we can do better within the report to explain by those things in there. Go back to my comment earlier on about the statutory nature of the things that it is. And it is essentially what you looked at are two different things. There. What you're looking at is some objectives we're trying to achieve and our progress against those objectives and the performance indicators that tell us how we're achieving against that. And actually, separate to that, but really critically important, organisationally, the risks that we are dealing with whilst we're trying to achieve those, to not just the wellbeing objectives, but deliver against, you know, the organisational activity. The risks that are either within our control or outside our control, and actually how we're mitigating those, and that's sort of an inherent risk that we're dealing with. So it might sound counterintuitive, but it's perfectly feasible to be performing at the green level against your wellbeing objective, but actually holding within that potential significant risk associated with it, which is what we reflected in that. But if I'm thinking about costs, we can put some words in this to explain why.
It's using the right in both sections for a different sort of purpose.
They are completely different, and I totally understand why that would appear confusing. So we obviously need to do better with it. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, it was just emphasising that point. You know, it's the RAG rating for a particular goal, particular objective within our strategic priority. But like, let's take your example of housing, 5 wellbeing objective 3. So on that goal, we are going down major reforms around trying to prevent people coming homeless. However, Westminster government were planning to or have released a lot of prisoners early beyond our control, which means it's a major risk for us on a holistic level. But we are what we control. We're on a path to reform, but there are factors beyond our control which make it a red.
I think that was part of my concern actually, because if I look at all the risk register and look at all this red, I'm thinking, heck, what's the council doing here, you know? But as you say, really, those are coming from elsewhere beyond our control, and I think they help with that sort of like that.
Sorry, Jay, just to close that bit. And obviously, there's a separate reporting mechanism specifically around the risk register, but just to assure members and any public watching that what you have in that corporate risk register, you know, are the top risks that we're dealing with as an organisation out of the 800 odd services that we're delivering. So if you look in a service plan, there will be a series of risks that services are just dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Inevitably, we're delivering services to 160,000 people. We are carrying risk associated with the delivery of those services.
Okay. All content now with the wellbeing objective 1. And move forward to objective 2, and again, Mr. Jones is here on this.
Yeah, so yeah, this overall it seems green. It's a very positive story in this area this year. On the waste front, we obviously rolled out our weekly refuse collection, and as Bev said, the change in the regulations for businesses came into play right at the cusp of this year. So you'll see that we recorded our highest ever recycling rate of just shy of 68% for the year, and we're on track to meet our 7% target in this year. So that's a real positive. The team been working really hard on that. Elsewhere across within the wider environmental spectrum, our carbon reduction plan has progressed well. Scrutiny, the last scrutiny we're up, we brought the update on the climate change plan for people to see, but really good progress there. Further 18% in reduction last year, and in particular, you know, as Reece touched on earlier, we've been incredibly successful in attracting investments with that. Over a quarter of the Welsh government funding in that area has gone into Newport. Is, you know, real success story for the team, and that is not just about you know, having people have nice solar panels and stuff on the roof. That's really really impacting our budget. So the investments and the grants that we've been able to achieve over the last 5 years has resulted in last year, during the high energy levels, of a £2 million reduction in our energy bill as a result of that. So if you think about that, that's equivalent to roughly 3% on council tax. It's not just sort of fluffy net zero work happening in the background. There's a tangible benefit to small one. And similarly, we talk about the investment to schools. So this year alone, we mentioned here, £5 million investment going into schools to improve the fabric of schools to make them more energy efficient. And that, that helps broader with our asset management backlog, because it can replace things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to afford, as well as hitting our environmental targets. It's a real positive. So last year we were just kicking off the play area investment for this year, for the year we're talking about here. Last year and this year is getting confusing, isn't it? Last time we were here, we were just talking about starting on the play area investment. In the year we're reporting, we've had significant success of 17 areas completed, and some young children. I visited most of them myself, I think, and given my eldest gives them a rating now, so his own little score for play areas in Newport, and they're improving on his score as well, so that's good. People be aware that the major investment that went into Deeper Park, obviously the council bought the park in for the residents of Newport in that year, and then has been able to invest. And we saw the first fruits of that investment earlier this year with the opening of the new playground and the splash area, which has been incredibly popular. So real positive in that area. Elsewhere, work on the canals, as people be aware, big investment in trying to improve the canals, 14 locks and through to Malpas, and that continuing this year. On air quality, again, we're able to say a pretty good success story. Air quality indicators now moving in the right direction, and half our air quality management zones will be removed in the next round. And I believe the air quality management plan will be coming to this committee, I think, 2 months' time. It's on the agenda shortly. Maybe it's not this committee.
I think this was made for it to go straight to the cabinet.
Okay. But that's near completion as well. Generally, it's a positive across the board. The one challenging area remains highways, as people will no doubt know from their mailbox. So we're pleased that the cabinet put additional investment into highways for this year, and there's a one-off investment. However, as mentioned in the report, our backlog is over £100 million. So it's going to take a lot of time and money to even start eating into that backlog. At the moment, obviously, we've got a bit of assets that's depreciating more rapidly. So that remains a big challenge for the area in an otherwise positive report.
On the splash pool, I did notice in the Western Mail that they described it as for very easy to the residents of Cardiff.
Yes. Well, it's good that we're attracting all these tourists, isn't it?
Hopefully that paid. Right, we're on objective 2 then. Anyone? Okay. Thank you very much. I haven't got you. Sorry, I don't think I've got you down on the list again. So if you'd like to have a rest at the back, then can we invite Mr. Poyner to?
I'll stay here because I'm going to perhaps need to chip into the other one. If that's all right.
Yeah, of course. We need your chair.
Oh, you need to chip. Okay, I'll chip in.
You was on the.
I'll chip in from the back. I'll echo.
Thank you. Okay.
Like,
Well, we
share.
Really look forward to this, Evan, and thank you very much for coming to community tenure.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Please.
So wellbeing objective 3 centres around the quality of social care and community services. And as you'll see from the RAG rating within the report, it is predominantly green. However, there are a couple of ambers there, and those ambers will be highlighted within the key challenge section. So just to focus, start off with in relation to the key achievements during 23-24, we saw a reduction in the number of our children looked after population, which is quite significant from 376 to 350, and that is a significant amount of work to achieve that by the teams. I am going to obviously defer to some colleagues because there are this section also talks about some of our housing objectives as well. So, but as you'll see in the key objectives about an investment in there in relation to registered social landlords. Our youth services achieved a silver quality mark and were shortlisted for the Welsh Government Youth Excellence the work that they'd undertaken with our unaccompanied asylum seeking folks here in Newport. But also, and Paul's already touched on this, about remodelling of the play provision to include inclusivity and we've also had two positive inspections of our two of our flying start settings within the city. There's also been a launch of the delivery of the Pearl Master Plan and also the return of the Centrica Lodge into the council's control. So those were the key achievements during 23-24. So just to say a little bit about the challenges that we continued to face during that same time period. And it's also already been alluded to by the Chief Executive about the increasing demand in the number of people being referred into social care, both from a children's and an adult's perspective. You'll see one of the amber ratings of the 7 priorities there, that when I read this coming fresh into the local authority this week, I was my eyes were opened a little bit when it said the amber rating against the safeguarding of our children and young people. And having looked at that in a bit more detail, that is not saying by any stretch of the imagination that we are not safeguarding our children and our adults, and we are responding to referrals in the statutory required timescales as they come through the door. What that specifically relates to is the training across the council of all members, employees, in relation to basic safeguarding training. And you'll see within the report there is a chart which tells you where the training has occurred and what work is required to increase the levels of training. So it's not our front door response to how we are safeguarding children and adults. It's more about the generic training of the workforce across the council, so they're aware of their safeguarding responsibilities. So that's certainly an area that we need to take forward in the coming year. And just to say then, obviously this has already been touched on, about continuing to meet the housing needs and our demand for homelessness, addressing the number of empty private properties across Newport. One of the key challenges as well that we are facing is a reduction in grant funding, potentially for disabled facilities grants. And then a further challenge, specifically for social care, is a move from the IT system, which currently holds all of our client records, onto a new IT system, which comes to the end of its life in January 2026. Now, that may seem like a long way off, but in fact, the amount of work that is needed to move from one IT system to another IT system is extensive. And within that, we must make sure that we protect the records and the confidentiality of those records of the people and the population of Newport that we are involved with from a social care perspective. So that's a very brief overview, Chair, of the achievements and the challenges within this wellbeing objective.
Thank you. Would you also like to comment on tables on page 88 to 95, which, as we said earlier, do look well stark. Awful lot of red in there.
The report is 75, if that's on. Thank you.
I'm getting it. Okay, I think I'm going to need to defer to my colleagues in relation to those, because that is really in relation to the homelessness and housing.
Councillor Petroni would like to help on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as I articulated to Councillor Cox, we have a housing crisis. There's no point beating around the bush. Every council has a housing crisis. Across the country, we're not building enough homes to meet demand In addition, we're seeing a kind of societal change around more single people with other social issues that need to be adequately housed. If I can put it that way.
Complex, yeah.
Complex and facing different issues, and we haven't got enough suitable accommodation to accommodate those needs, and that is just the reality of the situation. Now, we have a great team, a great office support who are initiating reforms this year, trying to meet this demand, but the red reflects, Chair and committee members, the reality of the situation, which is pretty tough, very, very challenging. It's an ongoing discussion amongst me, cabinet, and key officers. But that the red is reflective of the demand, the need, and our ability to meet that demand, which is extremely tough at the moment. I've met all the RSLs since becoming leader and had pretty robust, direct conversations about the RSLs also supporting the council to deliver the housing, because as you know, the council don't have own housing. They've been receptive to that. There's ongoing discussions around that, but this is not a quick solution. This will be a medium-term solution to meet this demand. And I mentioned earlier, the Westminster government, for different reasons, have announced policies around releasing prisoners early, which increases the demand on all councils, including us, which is those single individuals with complex issues that need to be housed in suitable accommodation for them and others around them, which we don't have enough properties. And that is just the reality situation. Red is telling everyone that's what we're facing.
Thank you. Ms. Owen?
Chair, I'll repeat what the leader has said, but we're on a housing crisis, so just to sort of reaffirm that. I was on a call with the other 21 chief execs in Wales and Welsh Government several weeks ago, and I won't say which authority, but another authority was talking about the need to procure large hotel, quite a large hotel for temporary accommodation purposes. As the leader has mentioned, we are in I would say probably a third of the way through the transformation programme in housing. And housing is needed, a sterling piece of work in that regard. But I just wanted to pick up on the earlier point in relation to risk and then the RAG rating status and how you have this kind of route. So firstly, to give committee some assurances that we are aware of obviously the training needs and the continued need to roll that out for safeguarding. That was on the radar of corporate management team about a year ago. So that is bedding in. But as Tanya said, from a safeguarding perspective, our statutory duties are fulfilled, but we can never do enough in terms of safeguarding. So that's the journey run. And then the risks around housing, red, but we've done really, really well. You can see the sort of quantum of funding that was awarded in terms of social housing grant to registered social landlords. But again, it's still not enough to meet the demand that we have. So that is the priority for the service and for the authority at the moment, is to develop temporary accommodation provision. But also members will have seen through the consultation that the cabinet members signed off a new policy. So we're automating quite a significant amount of work within the allocations processing. But also we've developed a policy around direct lets with the registered social landlords, some of our individuals and families who are living in temporary accommodation as well, to try and speed up the flow through of that journey. So it's not easy. I would not sit here and say that we've got a magic wand. But again, every effort is being made to address that red that's sitting on that table.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Actually, Ms. Evans?
I've got nothing further to add unless we just take more questions, if that's okay.
Mr. James?
Hiya. I think firstly I'd like to thank the team for their quite frank account actually of the challenges facing housing and homelessness. I think other teams could probably take some learning from their honesty, because I feel like some other parts of the report give a rosier picture of what must be challenging situations. So it is nice in a way to see a team saying, here are the challenges and that's that. And, you know, I'd really like to see more of that going forward. My question, though, is on safeguarding, and it might be quite a simple answer, actually. I just noticed that we'd had the highest number of referrals for 5 years, and that the majority of those came from, I think it was health, police. Let me have a look at the page again. Yeah, so health, police, and education. So we've got the highest number of referrals coming in, but we're also seeing drops in children on the child protection register, and drops in our looked after children as well. And maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but it just doesn't seem logical to me. So just wondering if you had some sort of insight that maybe I didn't grasp from the report as to why that might be, and have there been challenges, and what are you doing to mitigate them as well?
Thank you, Councillor James. Very astute observations of the figures in front of you, and I'm sure that my colleague Natalie, Head of Children's, would want to come in as well here. But I'll start off by saying, being very fresh into the local authority and seeing those figures, I'm very heartened by the fact that we haven't, with those, the high number of referrals are not resulting in more children coming into our care system, and they're not resulting in children going on the child protection register. And from what I can see, is the reason for that is because the amount that this authority is investing in preventative services. There are a number of teams that work intensely at first stage of referral to prevent those needs from becoming more complex and escalating. We've got a lot of grant funded projects by way of Families First and Flying Start, which do that preventative work within our communities to stop those needs escalating. So I believe that the reason that those numbers of referrals, the higher number of referrals that come through our doors, don't then translate into more children coming into care, more children going on the register, is because of the preventative work that is being undertaken by the teams that are in place. And Natalie, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I suppose in addition to that, Councillor James, is that when there is a need for a child to become looked after, what we do is we work with extended family, whether that be friends, whether that be birth family, in order to return them home as soon as possible. So I think it's changing that culture where historically, I think children, once they were in care, they remained in care. We're moving away from that, and we're constantly trying to work to reunify young people back to family where safely possible. So it's discharging of care orders, but also preventing children coming into care.
Yeah, could I just comment on? Thank you. Sorry. Could I just comment on this? That you've got a much closer relationship with the police, as you've reported to previous meetings of this committee, and also the system whereby schools are advised on Monday morning of any problems that have occurred over the weekend. And as that's proven to be helpful, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. So our front door of social services is a multi-agency front door. So that consists of police officers, representatives from education, probation, youth justice, preventative services. So what we're able to do is respond sooner, which de-escalates situations, because we all have the relevant information to make those decisions, rather than the things deteriorating and then things escalating. So absolutely, those relationships are imperative and really, really strong in Newport.
I think this is a really good news, Councillor James, because it shows vigilance amongst our public services about referring children to the council, makes us aware of instances at their very earliest stages, and then the teams are able to prevent a lot of that because, you know, care is appropriate in really extreme circumstances, but actually we don't really want children in care as much as humanly possible, because we know with lots of research that children in a family environment or with a family member have far better outcomes. So I don't mind referrals being high, and I don't mind care packages not going up. That shows we're actually doing our job. We're being vigilant while also making sure we're getting the best outcome for the child, which is with the family member. If referrals start dropping, I'll be more concerned because we all know society is tough out there. There are a lot of societal issues that are beyond this council's control. If referrals start to drop off, I would be asking officers, is our vigilance high enough? Our awareness of children who might be not getting the best care, should we say, good enough? So it is a very good point. But for me, I'm reassured that our referrals are up, but our care packages aren't.
Thank you for that supplementary. Are you content, Councillor James? Thank you. Right, so if there's nothing else on objective 3, will we move on to objective 4 then, please? Mr. Collins, will you be on this?
Okay. So objective 4, inclusive, fair and sustainable council. So this is about, you know, the way we operate as an organisation, the way we retain our staff, members, the way we engage with our communities and businesses across Newport. So this is, I suppose, the supporting elements of operation of the organisation. So a couple of different bits within this. So we're going to pick up through sort of plans and strategy side, which kind of lay the foundations for that work. So doing this year, we've also a new people plan, our new strategic qualities plan, digital strategy. So some of those sort of key underpins of actually how we would operate and what our regular level we're putting this year. Just pick up and step around strategic qualities. Trying to get the right page now, but it's quality of report, which would be in the 50s. It's close as I can get. Sorry, thank you, Sam. Which is some data then around workforce, which comes out of the strategic quality plans. We have a series of objectives within. So that's about ensuring workforce looks more like the population of Newport. So we've got some improvements there, so we've got a way to go, some improvements there. Some really positive work done on gender pay gaps. We've actually got an inverse pay gap in Newport as an employer. I think that's incredibly important. And also, you know, that statistic, which I think is really, really good as well, which is about 69% of our highest paid job in the organisation are undertaken by women. So some really good work on that, but obviously some progress to make on it. Pick up an assets. Paul's already talked about the housing infrastructure risk associated with this, so this appears on our critical risk registers as well. But we've got a significant piece of work in the way around asset rationalisation stroke optimisation. And I think the optimisation word is really important within that. So we're working very closely with that lead service, particularly around the eliminate agenda and ensuring that actually, you know, rather than going out to the market, we're using our own facilities to try and pick up some of that requirements around children's services. And also with David Walton's team around housing homelessness and actually the opportunities around that in order to try and alleviate some of the pressures that service. But a significant piece of work really around better understanding of our assets, the utilisation of our assets, and that is linked into the public around trying to explore community transfers where possible as well, but doing that on a sustainable footing. What we don't want to do is create a liability for a community group. What we want to do is create an asset. So we've got some of those in the way. They are resource intensive, but really beneficial as well as both communities to us. Procurement. So there's some information there around the themes and measures, and we're working within those to ensure that actually we are maximising the benefits of really significant amount of money that we use to procure services across Newport, but also preparation for new legislation that's an issue as well. So ways. And then just want to pick it, the website has already been mentioned, but there's a priority in there around our access to our services from cities. So obviously technological interfaces are really important. They are probably the most efficient and cost-effective way of us interacting with our communities. However, we also need to be better at the other ways of interacting with our communities, either by the telephone or face-to-face. So actually, we created the centralised museum and that customer interface there. But also we've got a fairly significant piece of work in the way at the moment. We've undertaken an independent review of how that interface with our service users, and actually we've got a work program in place that will create more improvements to that over the coming 12 to 18 months. Happy to take any questions or focus on anything else, Chair, within that picture.
If I might, committee, people news you haven't mentioned that as an interface.
Legal matters.
Sorry, can we get more information plugged in there? So is it around the non-computer users and maybe get more information on council services? I appreciate there would be a cost to expanding the size of it, but it might be a cost worth paying. What's the committee then, please? Oh, we're all content. Thank you very much. Councillor Petroni wanted to overview this section, I think.
Is that all the well-being objectives, Chair?
Yeah.
I'm just firstly apologise for being late. I had a medical appointment at 9 and medical appointments don't stick to time at 30. I think we're all aware of that. It was, I don't know what Bev said. We didn't coordinate what we were going to say, but it'd be fair to say, and officers feel free to come back in on this. What I have to say is, I've been really annoying. Because my big thing is about transformation and asking the why questions of why we operate the way we do. And I don't heard Councillor James about comment about us truly reflecting the pressures on councils. Councils cannot carry on as we are. Can't. No council. Bristol, I don't know if people saw on the news, Bristol Council, City Council, the mighty super powerhouse of Bristol is close to bankruptcy. I don't think Leeds would come out in the BBC News willingly to say things like that if it wasn't that serious. Cardiff, Billy, you name any local authority in Wales, they're all facing huge deficit, and Newport is no exception. We're looking at 15 million next financial year. There are going to be some big choices, and there's two ways to handle that. It is to salami slice, cut all our services where we can just to make the books balance, and there'll be some of that, or we can truly look about transformation and reform. And that will be painful, but we need to do it. And I think Newport's in a great position to lead some of that transformational piece. We've got some amazing officers who are really up for that agenda, and there'll be officers who aren't. And that'll be about having tough conversations, and that'll be true of councillors as well. And this is beyond party politics. It's not a Labour, Conservative, Independent, Green, whatever you want to be. The financial situation is the financial situation. It is a situation that councils have to reflect on and truly face. And I want to face it with a transformational lens and really be the forerunners of reforming how local government thinks, works, and operates. Beggars often say to me, slow down, because I want it really quickly. But there is a good creative tension there where officers are tempering my demand but also on pushing officers. And I think that's healthy, and getting a nice equilibrium to come out of this, saying not only is it really tough for local authorities, but look at Newport. Newport is really showing the way, really showing how it's facing these challenges. And I want us to be in that position. But will that mean there'll be tough conversations with officers and elected members? Yes. Next year, there'll be tough conversations. But I'm determined not to be a dire one or a negative one. It's about we're changing because we're changing to here. This is our plan. This is our agenda. And we won't be just completely negative facing this challenge. We're going to be on the positive lens, on the positive slant. And I just really want to get that message across now. I'm really up for the challenge. I'm super keen, super eager, maybe too eager. But all I want is for Newport to lead the way in Wales. That's my ambition. That's the officer's ambition. And that's where we've got to go. I just wanted to convey that point. I'm happy to take any questions on that. So.
Councillors?
I have, yeah, I do. Yes, we all agree that there has to be change, but can an objective be set so that there's an end to that change?
Yes.
So that people say we're not doing it for change's sake.
It's a good point, Councillor Harris. It's not change for change's sake. There will be clear set out objectives and a clear plan being set out for forthcoming plans.
Can I, yeah, just come back in. You know, and yeah, Councillor Petrucci's, you know, I had lots of conversations about this. It is through the lens of an officer, that cross-party approach is really refreshing and welcomed, because it is a difficult landscape up there, but we always look at it as positively as we can. And you know, I'm really proud of the officer team in the way that they've delivered over the last, you know, 5-10 years, particularly the last 5 years, given the chance we've got. And we will stand up to the challenge again, because there is no other option other than to deliver for the people of Newport. But it's about, as Leader said, it's about how you try and do that in a transformative way. And I think coming back to the style of the report, which I alluded to at the very beginning, about really honing in on what we do already that is really good. And I think you've been a little bit surprised perhaps at some of the stuff that we are already doing, and perhaps we like, oh, I don't like them for bushel, so to speak, a little bit. But also, as Councillor James said, being honest, you know, about our challenges is a fresh approach as well. So we're up for that challenge, and we really open the conversations with, you know, the opposition groups and the administration about how we deliver that. So it's a difficult future, but I think it's not one that's insurmountable for Newport to lead the way, as the leader said.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to forward our recommendations now. So, are we happy that there's been a reasonable progress towards our objectives? Comment, please.
I am.
Yeah, I mean, I go further than that and say that, you know, well, I might think as a committee, speaking as a member of the committee, that it's been, we've made some comments on the report, and I hope that there were positive ones, and we decided to show even more so what the council is achieving. It's been a delight to read it, and it's been a delight to sit here, listen to the reports, just to find out and to be told about the incredible work that's going on within the authority and the achievements of the officers. So I just hope that somehow comes out in the record of this meeting.
Thank you. And how effective is the council in forming against its objectives? Something we content with me. I take it we've content. And we have had some comments on the format of the report through the meeting. So tell us what we.
Yeah, if it's right with you, Chair, I'll go through everything I've got and make sure that
Please.
committee are content. So first note came across the point about the summary report tables, public engagement page earlier in the report. On the point I waiting to explain the differences between brand ratings, strategic priority and the risk register. I've got Councillor James's point about highlighting challenges in wellbeing objective 1 strategic priority regarding real living wage. And you'll put a chair about expanding report matters to include more information for signposted in residents who are council services. And then I just know that the committee content for the report. If I've missed anything, I want you to read.
Yeah, just as I think that the committee is normally very happy with the executive. But we get the highlights, and then we can have the rest of the appendices. We might like links for the future rather than putting in large amounts of information. Yeah. Thank you very much. We're now moving on to item 5, I think it is. So again, I'm sorry, anyone who doesn't need to be here to be kind enough. Thank you very much for your chair. All if you're comfortable. We seem to be tripping over strategic qualities parts at the moment. You seem to fit in the other day. Welcome. Right, who's going to lead on this?
Shall I introduce the chair?
Please,
Thank you very
okay.
much. Yeah, that's a really important point actually, which I'll cover. So what we're presenting today, and we're really pleased to be here, is the final report against the old strategic equalities plan. The committee recently received the new strategic equalities plan, which we'll touch on. So this is actually, we're not reviewing the objectives, we've already done that. We're looking at our performance on the old plan. So that ended in March. This is a report that then goes forward to both Cabinet and to full council, and as was the plan, of course. So I'll introduce my colleagues who are going to be supporting me today, and obviously we all wrote the report together. So Janice Dent, Don Batali, and we've got the Cabinet member here to support us on this. Clearly before your time, this report, but we're working together on the new plan. And so Sean.
Yeah, so
Sorry, Councillor Druid, thank you very much for coming along. Would you like to say something now?
Sorry.
Or wait till the end?
Let's see something there and maybe at the end as well. I mean, if I may.
Of course you should.
I just, yeah, I'm proud of the work of the team, and I want to pay tribute to the work that they have done that's reflected in this report. And as we progress with delivering our new strategic plan, then we recognise that more work needs to be done. So we remain committed to addressing the inequalities that still exist in our communities. Let's see what this work, your Commission Chair, what the work we have done that's reflected in this plan says to us.
Thank you.
thanks, Councillor. And yeah, just to say that as with many reports, there's two sections, there's two aspects to the report. One is as a council, and how are we doing, and how are we supporting inequality and supporting equality. And the other element is it is part of our duties under the Equality Act 2010 to provide this report. So some of the information contained is for statutory purposes and some is for our purposes. So on pages 105 to 142 of your pack, it's really important. What we wanted to do was set out a summary of the key achievements that have been made, and it's based on the scrutiny's feedback, on the committee's feedback. When we brought the plan, we've added in, we've tried to find a balance between this year's, but last year's annual report, and also a look back across the whole life of the old plan. And that was something that committee members asked for when we were here with the new plan. So the equality data element that's in there, workforce equality data, that's the publishing requirement of the Equality Act. So that's why that's in there. Really wanted to thank you again for your feedback, and we're just for both the old and the new plan. We're really lucky to be supported by the Strategic Equalities Group, and they make sure that we're kept online and kind of work with us to achieve our objectives. And particularly like to thank the leader for his support as previous chair, and importantly welcome Councillor Druitt as the new chair, and looking forward to Councillor Happiness and look forward to this agenda.
The 6 equality objectives identified within our previous strategic equality plan, this plan, are leadership, governance and involvement, customer service and access, representative workforce, community cohesion, learn well, and independence. As Janice mentioned, the summary of achievements table on pages 108 to 111 of the plan identify some of the highlights from each objective, including training and policy changes, the launch of the new corporate website, which is fully compliant with accessibility standards, closure of the gender pay gap, the establishment of 3 staff networks for disabled, LGBTQ+ and ethnic minority staff, which continue to support the council in delivering our equalities work internally and externally. Additional support being provided to our more vulnerable pupils, and specialist support for our citizens with housing support needs, including victims of domestic violence. So further detail under each objective can be found on pages 112 and 129 of the pack, and the report closes with our workforce equality data and analysis on pages 130 to 139. As mentioned, it's also important to note that during this period, we developed our new strategic equality plan, which will run for 4 years, beginning from April 2024 to March 2028. And this plan builds on our success in delivering our equality objectives, the equality objectives in previous plans, and outlines our new priorities to advance equality for people who share protected characteristics, people with care experience in line with the motion to adopt care experience as a protected characteristic, and those experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage in every aspect of our work. Thank you, Chair.
Questions, please? Comments?
I'd like to know what it's probably predictable, I'm going to say, but because we've discussed this before. I mean, like anybody reading the report, reading previous reports, I'm very impressed with the amount of work that's going on. There's a tremendous amount of excellent work going on, and a lot of it seems to indicate that the council's got a really clear focus on where the issues are, and it's clearly making real efforts, quite impressive efforts to address them. But I never understood really why we, and if we go back to the previous report, we looked at the corporate wellbeing self-assessment, that we. Well, in this report, there's quite detailed data on the makeup of the council's personnel and the staff, yes, and there's obviously a lot of data, as John has been pointed out, there's a lot of very, very positive things to say about that in terms of achieving quality objectives. In the self-assessment that we've looked at previously, that there was, again, the use of data, for example, comparing children on preschool meals and children on preschool meals, etc., etc. So there's a lot used to, but and it actually says in the corporate wellbeing self-assessment that there's a use of data to track differences in exclusion rates, etc., etc., amongst pupils of different ethnic backgrounds. But I please point out if I missed it, but I cannot find any data anywhere that relates to ethnic minorities, and it does bother me because in the Newport is is obviously is a very diverse community. I mean, see, I've lived in Newport 30 odd years now, and it's certainly become, in that time, it's been very obvious that Newport has become more and more diverse in terms of ethnicity, community. If Newport had absolutely no issues whatsoever with differences in achievement exclusion rates, etc., between pupils of different ethnic backgrounds, well, I think it would be flooded with people, sociologists coming to study while it would be the only one, I think. Any report I've ever read on education or medical care or something, there's always this this disparity. And I think for two reasons. One is, as a councillor, if I'm asked to come along to this meeting and say yes, after scrutinising the data, I'm happy, that I find it a lot easier, actually, if I had ethnic data, for example, on exclusions, to say, yes, I'm content as a councillor with the work that we've done there. It makes it much easier. And also, I think as a councillor, it gives a much sharper focus. There's a lot of detail about the work that's been done, the objectives that we're looking to achieve, and it really would help, I think, to decide whether we're really hitting those objectives or not, and which ones are hitting well and which ones we're really perhaps not quite as well. But I'm just not sure how you do that without having the data in front of you.
Could I just use
I have said all that before.
just see clarity on in Councillor Clark's about exclusions. Don't necessarily think it will come to this committee. It'll be an education committee. So the data's there. You can have to play through a few more scrutiny duties.
Well, Chair, if it's there, I've never seen it in any report, and it is in education actually. It's usually, it's a big issue in some authorities actually consider exclusion rates, but it's nationally. I'm interested to know. What's the situation?
It looks like everyone wants to see it.
Chair, there is data on diversity, and it's on the council website, so it's a public available resource, and the data is split up into wards. So in each ward of the city, you have data that includes religion, sexual orientation, ethnicity, and so on, for each ward, and for Newport as a whole as well. So the data's there.
And I will say, as part of working with schools across the authority on developing their strategic equality plans, data is something that we've been looking at, and we've been looking at the qualities monitoring data and how we can align it with national data to make sure that we can provide that data in future reports. So data is an area that we're currently looking at with schools as part of the development of their strategic equality plans. So we hope we'll be able to provide in future reports.
Apologies, I was thinking of Natalie. I didn't call you by name. Yes, Miss Dent, you put back or Mr. Ball?
Yeah, just focus on the report, but there's an answer to your question, which I know, but I don't want to get it wrong within the committee. So I'll get the committee a written response. But it broadly goes like that data is just not available on a national basis to do those comparisons. Focus on eligible free school meals is the only data that you get. Right. So I will give you, rather you come back to me now, because I know you get a chat, rather than do it on an individual school basis, which isn't happened, because obviously the data capture is driven by Welsh Government, right? So that's where the data comes from. So that's partly what I just said to you, and partly the wrong answer to the question, right? But I'll get you a written response to that, because it was asked when education took their end of year report to scrutiny. And that was roughly the answer. So you will have the answer because it was within the scrutiny committee.
So,
I was going to just say the same thing as
Right.
over the years with our education colleagues.
Can I just say one thing? I'll shut up, sure. That, but my understanding is that schools, the data school hold, actually designates the ethnic background of each pupil. Yeah, it actually says in the report on the thing assessment that that data is there and is analysed. But I just don't never understand why it never is in any report that certainly I never see.
And neither do I, and that's why I'll get you a response. But it is a complicated answer. I totally get your point.
I don't want to sidetrack the meeting because obviously there's a lot of really good work going on, and I don't want to cast any doubt on that at all.
There is an answer. I don't fully understand, but I would get the kinetic answer.
If I could just go in on a separate point, thanks everyone. And also within this is not a report of everything to do with strategic qualities. This is a report on the specific objectives. So we've come to the committee before, but it's too much, it's not enough, it's too much. So we've been so we are also trying to strike a balance. But what the report is saying, that are we doing that activity? Are we sure that the data is there? Is it being monitored, as it says, weekly and monthly? Yes, it is. So that is what the report is confirming on every one of those points. And if you take any one of those points, I guess, is there evidence in the report of all of the things we're saying? No, but I don't think they can be for absolutely everything. And I think you mentioned the court report, thanks for that, because there's a lot of overlap there, isn't there? So we've worked really hard not to overlap other reports, including Welsh language, actually. So we're trying to signpost those other things, which isn't to say that isn't a fair point of attendance, but we haven't pulled in every evidence of every piece. There's an internal group that has assurance, chaired by the cabinet member, but lots of other members and officers there. We seek assurance in that group that these things are happening. So it's kind of not our judgment, it's a collective judgment that we present.
If I could just comment on a couple of things. As chairs of various scrutiny committees, we try to ensure that everything is dealt with. Perhaps we need to signpost that a little bit more, say this is being dealt with in technical basis. My understanding again, over the course of this report, exclusions in schools have been dealt with quite differently to what they were 4 years ago. And there's no rarity in schools for there to be an exclusion. And ethnicity within education or anyone else is self-reporting. In other words, you can say, well, know the ethnicity of every child in the school, but in fact, you don't. You know what they told you they are, which doesn't necessarily mean you get the true picture. Did I get that one right?
I think that's the case in general, isn't it? You this to yourself.
This is what we based off, which is what we're working on with the data categories. Steps next to line with it. So in the future we should be able to, I think would be comparative.
Thank you. Councillor James, you've been waiting a long time.
That's okay. That's absolutely fine by me. Yeah, so I was just looking at equality objective 1. I noted that in visibly celebrating Newport's diversity, which is 113 of our packs and 8 of the report. I'm assuming this list isn't exhaustive, and I was just wondering whether or not the council had visibly celebrated International Men's Day.
The list is not exhaustive.
I've said this every day.
The list is not exhaustive, but what we've tried to do is we've developed an inclusion calendar. So every year we review the inclusion calendar with our staff networks and staff, and we decide the days that are important to staff and community to support throughout the year. And we review this annually. We haven't celebrated International Men's Day within the life cycle of this plan, but it's something that we can take into consideration for the future.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I've got two boys who are teenagers, and thinking about the issues they're facing as they're growing up. I'm aware, for example, that suicide is the biggest killer of men under 50. It's people under 35, but between 35 and 50, it is men. And, there are good reasons, I think, to celebrate International Men's Day and to, make sure that we're promoting those sorts of issues. I'm aware that I'm not the typical audience for International Men's Day, but I suppose as a mum of boys, I do want to see more of that in the future. On the gender pay gap, then perhaps a bit more audience, perhaps more the appropriate audience. I'm really glad to see that women are earning £1 for every £1 that men earn, although it does look like it's moving in the wrong direction slightly, ever so slightly. I was just wondering though, because it does say that women make up the majority of the highest earners in the organisation. So I was wondering if there was a quartile breakdown so that we can see, for example, in the lowest quartile of earners in the organisation, what the gender pay gap is there versus the highest.
There's a separate gender pay gap published report, an HR report, so we'll send that on to the committee for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Collins.
I've been promoted. I read the throw that. And yeah, so I think we can send that on. I think it also, when the pay policy comes to council in March, that is usually part of that as well, but we can send that on. I have to say, we are one of very few organisations that actually publishes its gender pay report.
And you mentioned a little earlier about the building programme in Newport being cost overrun and all the reasons for that. But one of the major reasons is men are getting paid far more than the construction industry. Because they're not enough women in the construction industry. So this is what's your cost overrun, and that's what has the foreseeable future. Sorry.
Yeah, part of the issue, I think it was on the news last week, there are broader issues within the construction trade around staffing anyway, in particular lack of appropriately qualified resources across the piece, and that's impacting costs quite significantly. Yeah.
But the career opportunity for young people, the areas of construction industry, I think from now they leave it like 100,000 a year, like too many hours employed. Very good for me. Thank you, Councillor Cherry, you can tell. Yeah. So no other questions or comments? Right, so we've been asked to consider whether this annual report is true of their accounts. We can cover that. Yeah, thank you. It highlights the ongoing commitment to equalities. Yeah. Okay. But the annual report highlights the ongoing commitment to. Oh, it focuses on the appropriate areas of development. Okay. Any other comments and recommendations?
Could it be helpful to go to what I've got?
Yes, please.
So obviously, this is written answer about your question for the box, I know that. highlighting the importance of celebrating International Men's Day, James, and forwarding a pay gap report and pay policy to committee. Unless I've just noticed there's a contempt of the report. Is there anything else you can include?
I don't think so. I think all in all, just to thank the officers for their work. We need to note, I don't think any of them were in place 4 years ago. No, you were.
I was in a different role. Yeah. I suppose Reece in a different.
So we've done a tremendous amount of work and taking up other people's projects. Thank you. And can we move on, please, to the officers' reports?
Yeah. The first action plan, you can see that it's the update here to show we can that from comparison. Instructions. This has been sort of expanded to be an information report, just so we can give community a broader picture and a bit more information on that. So that will be presented to you as an information report. Next meeting on our forward work programme is the 27th of this month, but it doesn't have any agenda items. The committee want to cancel that meeting, or do you want to meet to discuss anything else, programs, anything like that, or are you happy just to cancel it at this stage?
Okay, we're cancelling.
I think it makes sense to cancel if we're not actually going to be discussing anything. Unless, Chair, you think there is something we need to.
No, we would, but it was short notice, we would unlikely to find a document of sufficient depth to be able to discuss anyway.
Brilliant, no problem. I'll make those arrangements then as when we can see here. Finally, just on the outcomes table, you can see that we've got responses to all our outcomes started. So that's nice and concluded. That's all from me, Chair. We need to note then, if we're cancelling the 27th, the next meeting would be the 25th of October for the anti-poverty strategic plan.
Thank you.
All from me, Chair.
Right, thank you very much for your attendance this morning. The top line now, please,